America, which stands one nation under God, indivisible. All right. Good morning, everybody. I will lead ourselves in the invocation until we get this under control. Okay, this comes from Romans 12, verses 4 through 5. For just as each of us has one body with many members, and these members do not have all the same function, so in Christ we, though many, form one body, and each member belongs to all others. And this verse came at me because as a Rotary group, I see this in action where we all have a lot of great skills and together collectively we have a great group. So thank you very much. Amen. Do we have any visiting Rotarians? And we're going to try out our hybrid meeting. Sean, you have a visiting or a guest. Do you have a guest?
I do have a guest this morning. Please welcome Trent Pomeroy, who recently not graduated, but retired from the Port Angeles School District. He taught fourth grade and I believe fifth grade too at times for many years over at Hamilton. And actually, Trent may not remember this, but when I first met him over 20 years ago, our local baseball team was actually in the playoffs, and I actually got to watch them win Game 3 on a walk-off bunt in his classroom. Trent's a big baseball fan, so anyway, that's my first story of Trent Pomeroy. But he's a great man. We're pleased to have him here this morning. His father was a Rotarian, and he is potentially interested in joining a Rotary club here down the road. So please give a very welcome to Trent.
Thank you very much.
Trent, the floor is yours.
I'm sorry, what?
The floor is yours.
Thanks.
Oh, no, I have nothing to say. My dad was very involved with the Rotary in PA, and so anyway, so I'm just attending today, but thank you for having me.
Well, Trent, we appreciate you joining us, and we hope to see more of you in the future. And Sean, thanks for the introduction. I assume that there's no visiting Rotarians or other guests this morning. We'll move on to announcements. Steve is traveling. Well, first off, let's start with the barbecue and the pier, Kathy, that we just did last Wednesday.
Can everybody hear me? All right. We made a massive $475, and we had, I think, at least 10 people from the club show up. And thank you again for Vivian rising to the challenge and orchestrating all of us. So it was very successful. There was full lineups. We sold 168 burgers to a crowd, we think, of about 400 people. So for a pop-up burger sale, awesome job. They've invited us back next year. We'll look at the options when we get closer to next year, but because they're going to invite other clubs because we were so successful. So thank you for everybody in the club, and thank you for our community.
That was a lot of fun too.
And don't forget, we sold those 168 burgers in 1 hour.
Yep.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Thank you, Chris.
And Vivian, as always, thanks for organizing us. And I know, Kathy, you pitched in to help buy things. We appreciate that. Carmen, thanks. Hello, Carmen. Want to go ahead and update us on the community service project?
Yeah,
The
so
latest, guys?
Norm, did you give an update last week? I wasn't here last week about the work party that we had a couple weeks ago at Norm's house. So he's holding on to the picnic benches that we created. So we put those together and stained them, and they're beautiful. And so I think our plan is to bring them down to Jammin to showcase the work that we've done. So we're going to move those down to have some seating areas. And so we're on hold a little bit on the graffiti garden project, just until cases come down. We're going to reach out to OPCC and see when is going to be a good time for us to come and actually install the walls.
Okay.
So more to come on that. I figured we get jamming under our belt, and then we can move on to.
Yeah, good idea.
Yeah, and then we're looking for some more projects for in the areas of homelessness, youth, and elderly. And so we have some ideas floating around, so more to come on that. But we are looking for some more projects, and yeah. And then I think we're gonna talk about jamming too. So
Yeah.
update on volunteers for jamming.
Okay,
So.
so nice setup, Carmen. Thank you very much. So look, next Saturday is a huge day for our club. It is the biggest event that we held all year. It's gonna be massive because everybody's in the mood for live music outside. So 1 week from tomorrow is Jam in the Park. So we need all hands on deck for sure. Todd, along with his band, but he's got a great band schedule lined up. It's gonna be run from 11 to 5. Things are looking good, really good, in terms of how things are flowing. We do have some spots, in terms of help that's needed. And if you're not available those times and you just want to write a little note to Steve on what you can do, I'm going to pass this around. But we appreciate if just showing up and coming in. So I'll pass this around.
I've signed up for the entire afternoon.
Yeah, a lot of people did too as well.
Yeah.
So I'll pass this around. If you want to sign up, I think we're looking really good for that. So, and I appreciate Steve for organizing this. The other thing I'm gonna pass around is I still have some spots for greeter and invocation and happy bucket. So if you're able to,
No, I have it.
yeah, in fact, let's pass around together. So,
I want
other announcements, Steve sent out a PDF with membership, so if you haven't paid, please send in your membership dues, so we can get that in the bank. Okay, I think we're good at announcements.
I got one.
Oh, Tyler, please.
September 17th is the United Way campaign's kickoff event, which this year is going to be held at 7 Cedars. It's a champagne and cupcake event. Tickets are $60. You get a cupcake, you get probably lots of champagne, and lunch. There's also door prizes and raffles. There's a guest speaker and a swag bag that's worth more than the price of admission. Tickets are $60. If you want to make a date out of it, it's $100. We won't check we're not going to check to make sure you're actually a legitimate couple or not. So if you have a friend you want to bring, it's $100 for 2 people, $60 for 1. Right now, it's still on, although we've reduced the number of people that can attend from 150 to 100 to meet social distancing requirements. It will be a masked event, and we are working on a virtual backup plan.
Okay, so
I'll pass these out.
So Brian, you're online now, so just introducing Tyler to folks, pretty much, but Tyler, President of United Way, so to help out and support Tyler, I'll take one of those and I'll send it to Brian, and then Brian will send it out to the whole suite. Okay, so that way everybody gets a hard copy. Any other announcements this morning? Okay, Laurel.
Laurel, can you hold for just a second? I'm trying to get the speaker screen up here.
Do you want an happy bucket?
Oh, I forgot that last week too. We got these presents. Tyler's gonna do it. Okay.
Okay,
Before we introduce the speaker, we got the half bucket going on.
Laurel, we're good.
Okay, thank you.
Happy 5 because I don't think. Who else is happy?
I am.
Norm's happy.
I had 70 happy bucks. I turned 70 last Sunday.
Wow.
And had a wonderful party with a bunch of friends, and especially including Todd and Amanda that came and provided a concert for us for about 2 hours. That was wonderful. This was a deal that I bought at our Rotary auction last fall, not knowing how or when it would ever be used. And I mean, they were fantastic. So it was a great time. And I'm happy to make 70 and hopefully it'll be 71 or another year.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Norm. Oh, well,
5 happy bucks for the great turnout at the peer concerts.
Not because you're 5 years old.
I wish. Well, sometimes.
Happy 20 for an amazing club.
Yeah.
Of which you are a pillar. Okay, tell me when I can.
You are good.
You're good. Far away.
So this is the first time I've introduced the program since before, I guess, BC, before COVID. And I'm very happy to say we have an excellent program today. We are going to hear from Jeffrey James, who is our new executive director at the Port of Port Angeles. And he's got quite an extensive background, which I will tell you about. He's a native of California, and he enlisted in the Navy in September of 1986. And after obtaining a Bachelor of Science degree in mechanical engineering from Oregon State University, he received his commission as a naval officer in 1992. Most recently, Geoff served as the branch chief for current operations to the international military staff at NATO headquarters in Brussels, where he was directly responsible to advise and develop military advice for 30 nations of the Military Committee and allies for consideration by the North Atlantic Council on all matters concerning NATO's operations, missions, and activities. Geoff and his multinational team routinely coordinated with national representatives, the NATO international staff, and other stakeholders to collaborate strategic objectives and influence policy development. Over the course of his 34-year career, Geoff served in several diverse and challenging assignments. Some of these include executive officer of a nuclear submarine, submarine liaison for the Ronald Reagan Carrier Strike Group, command of a 65-foot submersible for clandestinely deploying SEALs, commanding officer of Trident Training Facility Bangor, commander of the Provincial Reconstruction Team in Uruzgan, did I say that right?
Close enough.
Yeah, Afghanistan, submarine material officer and theater nuclear power officer in Naples, Italy, and Navy section chief for the Office of Security Cooperation at the U.S. Embassy in Iraq. Though primarily a nuclear submarine officer, he has been fortunate to have the opportunity to take on exciting and unique positions, resulting in him having a wide range of experiences in various working environments. Following his retirement in spring 2021, Geoff and his family returned to the Pacific Northwest, where he has become our new executive director of the Port of Port Angeles. And we are very fortunate to have a person of this experience and background serving in our port. So now I will hand it over to Geoff, and he will tell us how the port's doing.
Always kind of embarrassing, or to hear, when somebody reads your CV, you're going, did I really do that? And I purposely say 34 years. It's really like my day short of 35, but I will never, well, other than today, I don't want to really go out.
You rounded down.
I run down. Yeah, definitely. I didn't want to say I went all the way to the end. Right. I used to have a senior enlisted that worked for me very closely in Naples. And he said, if you get out of the military less than 30 days, you're just a quitter. So I said, damn, I have to go past that now. But thank you for the introduction. I appreciate that. It's very exciting to be up here in Port Angeles, serving as the executive director to your port. And really look forward to the opportunities, at least that the port can provide to the community, and also have for it to be a viable business. It's kind of like how I look at it, because if it's not self-sustaining, it's not going to be something we can get back to the community. So that's the look that we have to continue to delve back into it. So just really quickly, just for the general audience out there and on the internet, and for the robust attendance in the room, at least I can say that because they don't know how many are in here. But what I'd like to just say, some of the major lines that the port still has done for a while, but also that we're expanding into over its years. The log yard, we have 2 log yards we operate. Actually, in the public ports in Washington State, we're the only port that still runs a log yard. So in Olympia, it's been leased over to Weyerhaeuser. It's being run by Weyerhaeuser. We're the only one that still continues running it. And it's funny, when I sat down, I talked to the other executive directors about a month ago. They're still kind of like, you still do that business? It's like, well, that's why we were here, And so it's good that we still do it. And a lot of it's because it's still open to the public. So it's not the larger companies just coming in and kind of, run that enterprise, but it's still open for the small timber lots that can come in and still be able to sell their, or be able to ship logs in and out. A lot of our logs coming across our cofferdam and being pulled directly out of the water, obviously coming around the sound, but also we're still receiving products coming down from Canada and stuff. And we process, it's either to ship overseas or we're even taking chips from the peninsula and shipping them back to Canada, or also throughout the sound too. Yeah, it's not down to Coos Bay, Oregon. So very viable business, very important. So even though the business will be fluctuating, the port views it as a long-term investment. It's, you are going to have the feast and famine time. So, you try to reinvest when that money's coming in. And then during the slow times, you run out those slow times. And then because it's going to turn, it's a commodities market. And that's really what the port has, that flexibility to be able to do. For us as a municipality, compared to like cities and counties, they have to show profit. They have to, it's a viable business. We're able to run those out a little bit better for the community. We also are in charge of the 2 marinas. I know you guys are more than familiar with the John Wayne and also the Bow Haven here locally. A lot of capital investments are involved. A lot of different ways I would like to take those marinas. And those are what we're working with the staff right now. How do we make a marina really that somebody wants to come and drop their boat into the water? And so that's another thing that we're working on. The Marine Trade Center is another area. So I think more people are familiar with the Marine Trades area, where we have Platypus, we have Westport, you have Aero Marine. We're doing topside repair. It used to be Vigor, has now moved over to Motive. That's we have a polar vessel on the pier right now. We'll be having, I believe next week, a U.S. auxiliary coming in. We're going to be doing topside repairs. So it's still a continuing viable business as it means for Port Angeles to be able to continue that sort of work up here. We're still promoting it, definitely. Even with the chance that you aren't doing work topside, you can try to shift it over to late berthing. An example of that, you would see cable innovator up here. It's kind of a win-win, especially in the state of Washington, and it's a huge issue over on the other side of the sound of noise going back into the water for the orcapods, but also for the pollutants in the air. So if you get them pier side, they're, if possible, they can shut down engines, put them on shore power. And so that's, as at least as ability, some of these companies may be pushed to the pier if it's available. So that's something we continue looking at. But the when I talk about the Marine Trades area in itself, so that big dirt lot that used to be the K-Ply will be expanded into a Marine Trades center. So we already have a washdown pad. So when a vessel comes out of the water, it has to be washed down. So we have a collection facility there. It's we did it a little bit early, but that's on the timeline that we would like. That once we start building out the rest of that lot, so it's just a little bit over 18 acres, that we'll have work pads there, we'll have buildings there, a blast and spray building, itself, but more towards enclosed if we can, if the funding be able to support, really to make it a hub up here in the Puget Sound where we can have vessels come to Port Angeles and make it an opportunity for when they're researching where are places to go do my vessel work. Let me go up to Port Angeles. That's where the work is. Those are where the expertise are. And that's what we're going to be developing over the next several years. Being Navy, you know, I've seen vessels go from West Coast to East Coast just to get major work done. We have some of the large vessels going to Singapore getting work done. Honestly, somebody that's sitting down in Olympia coming up to Port Angeles, it's a 10-hour steaming event. So really, we can make this a hub. And that's really what we need to focus on. And that's what staff's looking at also. The airport, everybody's aware with that. So we continue, right now, one of our major works that we're gonna be doing over the next several years is redoing the runway. We've just recently, a company has just put his airplane hangar in, and he's gonna be stubbling that out. Really, it's not necessarily what you would picture a small municipal airport with just Cessnas coming in. We already have in excess of 90 commercial jets, or I should say company jets, that have visited the airport this year. So you see that sort of business coming in. And the reason why I say business, this may be somebody as simple as flying in because they want to go see Westport, see the vessel, but that just stimulates growth for the area itself. So we take that into account, in particular, when you talk about the length of the runway, the surface of the runway, maintaining it. If we can also expand for them to hangar their aircraft, and so we can get to repeat customers. Already over on the other side of the sound, that the airplane or the airplane hangars, I guess you should say, are just going away. They just aren't available. There's just too many planes and jets that, you know, for a 30-minute commute for their pilot to come over and pick them up is nothing, right? The world's small. It's not, you know, even though it takes the 2 hours to drive out here on the peninsula, really the world is small. And that's, but you know, how we view it. If you would like to, you know, put your corporate jet sitting here in Port Angeles, then the rates are good and space is available, they're more than willing to do it. So those are just yet another business line that we continue looking at and be able to expand. Because obviously, if you have presence, you also have interest to invest in the area and stuff. And so that's where we kind of look at the, you know, the port may make, you know, pennies on the dollar, but for the community, it's a lot larger than that. And then we also, the last piece, and it's not because of, you know, I'm racking, stacking in importance or anything. The last piece is our industrial area. An industrial area, really, that's where we've stepped a little bit more for diversification. Other than the marine trades, where we've kind of like do a complementary for the timber industry. We're also doing the same up at the industrial area composite work. We've had just last week the Northwest Tech Bridge. So that's really, it's an entity, it's a governmental entity that's come on out, and they're looking at the opportunities. And in this case, they're located at Keyport, so over in the Kitsap County, for doing some work out here, or looking for opportunities to work out here. So that's an idea, the possibility, we're exploring the idea of the possibility of, can we also make our industrial park a composite hub, just like we're doing down on the waterfront as a marine trades, do this as a composite hub, or just expand it to other entities or other types of work streams to keep the buildings occupied and continue on. Like I said, none of these lines are more important than the other. It's overall is to diversify. And since we are a taxing district, and we bring the money in, everything that I view, and this goes back, or this goes into the next part when I start talking about goals, is that we are the stewards of the taxpayers' money, is how I view it. And if I'm taking $1 from somebody, let's say out in Forks, and I don't have currently at present out in Forks in our investment, in our portfolio. However, I have to be the steward of that dollar. You know, what am I doing today that I'm getting a return and that I'm either creating a job here countywide, or how, you know, am I just earmarking it for certain things? And it's the same thing on the other side. So if I looked on the other side of the county, somebody in Squim, they paid their taxes. How am I investing it in there? Am I making those right choices for the board? You know, am I doing the right thing for the community? That being said, when I look at the goals, expand, diversify, improve wages, increase jobs, I think you've heard those mantras over and over again. I'm within that 90 days, and I think most of you that have served in the military, know somebody in the military, that we never try to make changes in the first 90 days. I mean, that's kind of, you hold off, you talk about it, it's kind of like what I'm kind of thinking. Basically throw it against the wall, see if it sticks. And, you know, I have a whole list of stuff, but as I continue going through the, how we're doing practices, as I continue to the staff, it starts getting smaller and smaller. It's like, yeah, they've already done that, throw that away, you know, it's, you know, go through. So really what I've been delving on and is, what are the practices that we're currently doing? What are the practices maybe we should be doing? And what are the changes that we need to be able to put in place that just makes us, and this is going right back to be a business. Everybody runs their personal lives like a business. Am I getting a return? You know, does this make sense? That's kind of like we're looking at the port. The port should not be, hey, yeah, this is a good deal just because it creates jobs. It should be, okay, you create jobs, but are you also doing the best for the entire community? You know, are you just entering in just a niche sort of thing? And that's where it really comes into more of a philosophical discussion. And then that's when I reach up to your elected commissioners of, is this the direction we want to go for the port? Because some of the decisions we make for the port locks the port in for 80-year leases. So we have to be very careful. A decision today, and that's kind of like how I framed it with the staff, a decision today, my child will probably be dead before the port sees the end of that lease. So, you know, that's the length and stuff. And so so each one shouldn't be being done with one or two people, really without a very deep decision making or very concise, deep thinking of is that the strategic vision, that how we kind of look at it. And some of those you may be able to have to pull it back shorter, because you've seen over the years, everything changes. You know, what you did back in high school is nothing like today, or what you were in college is nothing today, or your first job, nothing is like it today. And that's the way how you start picking the stuff apart. And that's what I've kind of told them. And this goes back to really throughout my career, you just kind of see it, looking at that in the long term and putting that in the context. If it doesn't smell right, it's probably not right. You know, and so, you know, I throw that out there as, yeah, I just want to make the commitment, especially back to the community. I look at every single one. And maybe that's because I'm a new officer, we just like taking things apart sort of thing. But I understand the value. Every decision has a deep implication down the road. And so, you know, locking yourself in, you need to be careful. And honestly, a 80-year lease may be at the best benefit of the working community. But if you didn't explore every single option, it may not be. And so that's where you need to be kind of careful. And those long-term decisions. So making a very large capital investment, it may be the right thing just today, but well, what does that business line look like in maybe 50 years, 40 years? And sometimes you just have to make assumptions. So that's, hopefully that's kind of like what I'm bringing into the port community, that I'm not a business, obviously listening to the CD, that's not my traditional background. In Iraq, I did foreign military sales, but really it was selling, you know, services or working on products themselves. It wasn't looking at, well, what does the vision look like in 50 or 70 years? So I'm expanding into that. But I am very fortunate because 1 week after I was hired by the commission, we also hired a economic development director. So economic development director coming on over from the South, a lot of experience over in China, very differing view, also be able to, he comes in, looking at it from a very critical point of view of say, is this the right thing? You know, if we're doing a dirt lease today, well, when does it shift over to a commercial lease and stuff like that? So really looking at the viability. And I think him and I are really, really synced on that vision and stuff. And so now it's just, it may appear to some as kind of a shift. I kind of view it, no, it's complementary. We need to develop, we need to be able to adjust to be the support, first for the port and for the community. How do we support that? And so it's kind of like a give or take situation. COVID, we're still balancing our response, the port's response for the COVID. We have throughout the 2 years have supported several of the business. We've reached out to several of the businesses that are our tenants. That how do you do rent mitigations? How do you support the individual business to make sure they're able to flow through? Right now, we're trailing behind about it's close to about $250,000 that we're assisting on businesses for the community in itself. It's about another $250,000. So what we put back into other organizations on a routine basis. And that helps back into the community, and some of it that when I say we do community back into, for instance, the EDC was the one that one of the main entities that was pushing for the relief funds and how those were distributed and stuff. So we kind of see our support and how that's helping the community and how you continue doing that sort of thing. The port itself only received about $160,000 over 2 years. So, you know, when I've heard briefs, some of the entities here in Palm County received 17 million, 5 million, 4 million. That's not the port. We've received $161,000 for COVID. But, you know, that being said, that's why we make some adjustments of, hey, I would like to help out some of our tenants because we did not receive the funds. We kind of have to pull those back. None of them were solid commitments. They're like, hey, we need to look, we just don't know yet and stuff. So it'll be challenging with the next wave coming through or the current wave, however you want to look at it. If lockdowns do occur, you know, we're going to have to re-engage back. What do we need to be able to do and stuff like that? I'd really hate to start even into our capital reserves, but that we may be at a point where it will lead us to that. And that'll be a conversation that I'll have with our commissioners if we go that way. We have not locked down. Most of the public ports have not done complete lockdowns throughout. We aren't mandating our employees to be fully vaccinated. We're pretty much waiting for the state mandate to run its course, and then we'll have those discussions at a later date on how that goes through. Harbor cleanup, I believe Karen has discussed previously about harbor cleanup to this group.
Yes, she has. Everybody nod your head.
We're still proceeding along down the path. So a lot of it is with our lawyers and the litigations as I go through. It's the slow process. It's not like you're going to see something that's going to be, oh my gosh, this just happened this week. It'll work its way. What I'd like to do, it just is a later date as we get the harbor cleanup plan, as we get a way forward, probably come back, brief the Rotary. This is where we are, and this is kind of like the measures we're going to have in place so we continue the cleanup. And tied to that is also the stormwater collection, or I should say the stormwater projects that's going on. So the port by 2020 was able to implement, I believe as you're aware, but just saying it just again, the stormwater across the waterfront or the collection with the exception of the log yard. So we're still working the log yard. We've talked to legislatures. It's going to be what we are now proposing, given upon the sensitivity of adjacent tenant, given that we still are required. We weren't able to meet the 2020 commitment, and that's just because we're still trying to work through engineering design, taking in the environmental, the cultural issues and stuff for the area. That project will probably grow about $13 to $15 million. So I'm sorry, it'll grow too. I'm not going to say, where it's going to go from. But so now we're looking at funding, how we're going to be able to work that. We've talked to several legislatures who would like to move forward. That's going to be another one of those slow projects, not just by the fiscal requirements, but also because we still are talking about cultural issues and, how do you maintain, because this is tied to the Western Harbor cleanup, because that could be a possible source of pollutants back into the harbor. So we need to be careful how we kind of separate those apart. We're working with the other PLPs that, so the other responsible parties of the lawsuit for the best way forward to handle it. So I guess in short, yes, we're looking for the community's best interest in this, and it's, we aren't slowing down. We're going through methodically doing the cleanup. I think we're overall, when you talk to other public ports, we're doing very well in that piece. Some of it would be a showcase for other ports to go look at. So it's not like Port Angeles way out there is not doing anything. We're doing very well. I need to make sure everybody understands that. And what we're doing here does have the eyes of several people of, okay, maybe that's the right way to go. So that's, as we know, or as we get a way forward on that, then it would be something really for people to fully understand it. I think it hashes its way out. Like I said, we could provide a better update as it goes through. I think those were kind of like the major topics that I wanted to talk about. And the reason why I say that, this goes back to the 90 days. I don't want to say we're making all these changes. I probably have some of my staff, I have some of my staff here going, yeah, what's he gonna do? And it's a learning. It's a learning for myself. It's a learning for Caleb as the economic development director. It's, where's the direction we clearly want to start making adjustments and stuff. Those haven't really been formulated out. I would say they're probably about 90 in some areas, but we're just holding off just to make sure. And until I have the commissioners buy-in on some of them, because some of them will be a direction and policy that until we get those buy-ins, then publicly I have to hold off on that level of discussion. But I believe that's really what I can. Hopefully, I've covered enough, and I haven't left enough blanks. You see some funny stares, but hopefully it's the coffee. I didn't see anybody got really that much food here. So, Scott, yes, sir.
Geoff, first off, thanks for coming this morning. It's an absolute honor for you to join us and to meet you. When you introduced, when we'll talk about your military background, that spoke volumes to me. For those, Geoff is top tier Navy, with everything that he's done. So it really spoke volumes to me. So within our Rotary Club, you already mentioned Dan, but also Chris is online. He's directly tied in. Chris, you want to introduce yourself to Geoff real quick, if you haven't already met?
Yeah, Chris Tupczynski here, and I manage the Marine Terminal, Marathon Petroleum Marine Terminal on the other side of McKinley.
So he's directly tied in. We appreciate taking 3 months just to listen. But if you had to, within your first year, if you had to take something that you want to achieve, what would that be? After your 3 months, you've put your feelers out, you've listened. But if you had to pick something that you really want to achieve within the first year, what do you think that would be?
So I think within the first year, what I'd like to do is do an entire vertical audit of leases. A vertical audit.
Okay.
So go through, I'm sorry, I know the term, it's more of a Navy term. So when you do an audit, it's either you do a broadband horizontal audit, or when you start doing vertical audits, you did go all the way down to the grave, sort of thing. And so I would like to do that with all the leases to fully understand. And and the reason why that would take a very long time, because decisions made in 1980 are made for a specific reason. And you may not agree with it in 2020, but they were made for a reason. You need to kind of build that tie and understand. But the reason why you dig down that deep is take those and see if they still apply to today. And so how you make those decisions. Some of the leases, and this is where I go back, when the port locks itself in for up to, I shouldn't say we do, but if the port, because that's the maximum amount I can in a typical commercial lease. If I put in the PMA directly on the waterfront, it's a different length of time. If I have it up at the airport, it's a different length of time and stuff like that. But to lock something in that long, is that still applicable? And a lot of times it is, because it's a 50-year lease, and then you look at several options are after them. And then when you start dealing with the options, is it in the best interest of the port and the community? You know, I'm not saying you just go on, I'm not gonna do it now. That's not the intent. You know, you really look at it in a critical sense. And I think healthy skepticism is the right way to go. You know, you look at it, does it really apply? My grandfather would have been the guy who signed this lease, you know, when you look at the length of time, saying, does it really apply to the port? And you look in the heydays, you know, when the port was having up to 5 timber ships at a time being loaded left and right, you know, pulling stuff from the water, the log trucks coming down, and then we had the crane, put them in from the pier. That's a snapshot. What do we have today? Some of the decisions making when was spotted out when the timber industry kind of really collapsed upon itself. Those decisions that were made at that time, yes, they were right at that time. Do they still apply to that? So when you kind of move forward, you start making those decisions, and how do you learn from that? How do you diversify? Is this the right thing? So I'd say, long story, I want to look at the leases. I want, and those take time. I mean, those just take months to dig through. This is the right thing to do. And then I want to start exploiting, and don't take the term wrong. And you know, if you want to use a different adjective on it, it's good. But we have the port still has several pieces of land that we could probably get a better return on, like just empty land we aren't doing anything with. You know, what can we do? And it's, you know, it's the bottom line does not make the money. You know, really the bottom line is the forward strategic looking, you know, what would be the best for the port in that investment, and then for the community also. So if you're looking at, and you know, I can throw just a very generic one out. It's not the port second, but you know, very generic term out. If the port recognized, let's say the port has a great prime real estate where we could put a parking lot, because we know parking is really bad. We know it's only going to get worse in 20 years.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's the best investment for the port, because we have that vision to be able to do that. It helps the community. It generates revenue. I can take that revenue not just to maintain that building, but in other areas that don't make a high enough, you know, return, but I can still continue to float. So that's the other thing. So maybe 2 over the next years where we'll look at be able to do that. Yeah.
Any other questions? Tyler, you had a question?
I can ask a question.
Sure.
We send out a lot of raw materials off of the Olympic Peninsula, and you're talking about job creation and stuff like that. Where do you see the port's role in maybe keeping the raw materials on the Olympic Peninsula and sending out finished products instead of the raw material, as a way to not only create jobs, but also to maybe cut down on some of the transportation that's going on in downtown Port Angeles that inhibits, you know, the environment down there?
Yeah, so a lot of that's going to be driven by the industry and the business. If the decision, I agree with you, we're kind of like an island here at the northern peninsula. I mean, it's only a 2-lane, 101. And you only have so much. If you do a finished product, how are you going to get it off? Do you barge it off? Do you ship it off? Is it a viable business? You have to take into account the longshoreman rates. You have to take into account the cost of getting it to the pier. I mean, that is a business model. We provide the terminal. I am not a customer of the longshoreman, the shipper is. I am not a customer of the ship coming alongside. The customer is, which would be, I mean, I could throw it out if it's PA Hardwoods. He has to put his business model together. How can we support? We can provide those facilities. If we believe that it's a viable, and we do, because we're going to be doing about a $2 million capital investment, bringing a barge alongside that's going to get offloaded to the water and we pull the logs out, then that's what we invest in. With those opportunities that are still there. If it's to do it the opposite way, if we understand that it is viable to go, so if that cofferdam, you can bring a barge up alongside, so you can take the paper projects out from the McKinley, for instance. That could be a model. However, McKinley, who's going to be the customer or the provider of just that terminal, if he finds, hey, we would like to do it, this is the reason why we want to do it. He still has to pay the labor prices. He still needs to do everything else, which is a total different conversation on that piece. That, we would love to do those type of opportunities, do those capital investments, go out, look for grants, the best we can do to be able to build those facilities. But we have to get approached. Because some of those, the port just, but it's not like a field of dreams, like I just build a pier and think, okay, who's going to use it? I need to understand that there is a desire and a need. And we will even go back and look at questions, or we'll delve into the company and go, I need to see your business model. Because I have to go and spend my capital, or I should say taxpayers' capital, and get the grants and everything else to do it. I need to understand, is this a business for 5 years, 20 years, 40 years, 50 years, that the community gets back, that sort of piece. Does that kind of make sense? It's difficult, I should say.
It seems like the board could have a little bit of power in shifting people in that direction as we're looking at, like, what's best for the taxpayers and what's best for business, but what's best for the environment. Is sending Herman Brothers out of here 100 trucks a day good for the environment, or does the port make a capital investment for a pier? And I mean, somewhere in between looking at a business model and the Field of Dreams model, in between, where it's like, we understand that this is a good investment, this needs to be done. Our business owners don't yet, but it's our job to educate them and show them that this is the way we need to do business out of the port versus the way we're continuing to do it. It seems like there's a marriage there.
I believe there's marriage, but there's also a counterbalance. I can't take a path that distinctly takes a disadvantage to a business. That's not right. I mean,
Sure.
I can't pick or choose who I'm going to support. If the push is you need to reduce the amount of traffic on 101, we need to have ferry service up here at Port Angeles. What can you do to develop a ferry or something like that really has to be driven. We can have a vision, but if the port isn't going to be able to fully understand and fully feel comfortable that it's a long-term plan, we just can't. I would be hesitant of just doing that investment. There's a lot of challenges, and we can have a very long discussion about shipping timber overseas. The price of just a leased made log ship for one run is more than double. The longshoreman price is double what the port price is. I mean, because that continues going up. I mean, it gets to the point of where does the line actually get drawn? And it's, the port has held its tariffs since 2019. We have not raised. I guarantee fuel prices have gone up. I guarantee shipping prices have gone up. I guarantee everybody's gone up, but the poor hasn't moved because we look at the best benefit back to the community. Well, it gets to a point of, I need now to raise my rates, and mind you, I'm moving them up to where they should be. I'm moving them from 2019 to 2021. I'm not moving them from 2019 out to 2024 rates where they would eventually be. I just have to do that measured approach. But it comes to the point of, well, where does the point? The poor just have to start making those changes. And if an idea comes through or an option comes through of we would love, now mind you, piers are very expensive to put in. We're talking $50, $80 million to be able to put it in. And those are year-long projects through the permitting process, through the ecology process, everything else, that if that is truly a commitment, we would have to make sure that's very clear. And mind you, the port is running around, about $12 million of only reserve capital. We need to make sure, okay, this is good because it was generated not just from the port, but from taxpayers over time. Is this the right investment? I move over here, because if I lose that, in my view, I have basically let the community down, because I need to make sure that that is the direction to go. I mean, you see, it's give or take, and I don't think a staff of 50 people making that big of a decision without the full input and full support of the community would be the right direction to go. The community would say, this is the change we like. And I don't think necessarily that's driven from Olympia. I think that really needs to be driven by Palm County. It's your money. It's it's the livelihood of love.
Geoff, thanks for coming this morning. Appreciate it very much. We can get you back in 4 months after you had your 3 months review and to come back and talk to us, that would be great. And you'll have we'd appreciate it. And welcome to our community. I think you're coming in at a great time, honestly, with the paper mill, online, and we'll get out of COVID here hopefully sooner rather than later. I think you're coming in at a great time. So thanks for coming to talk to us. We have a happy bucket, and if you could just choose one ticket out of there and read us the last 3.
524. It's an orange one.
524. Oh, yeah.
Is that?
Okay, you gotta find the ace of spades. And as Gary's doing that, just announce, there's no meeting 1 week from today, no meeting, because we got Jim in the park on Saturday, so. Sleep in Friday. So, thank you. What is it?
Saturday.
Thank you so much.